Approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Meeting summary approved. Item number 3, review and approval of PAG's draft fiscal year 2022-2026 transportation improvement program. Mr. Brown.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to introduce this item. As a reminder, it is an action item. So since August, we have been working with PAG committees to develop the draft fiscal year 22 through 26 TIP. As you can see from this timeline graphic, this is a 10-month process, and the memo for this item lists over 13 meetings that have been held with various committees to date, as well as one-on-one meetings with each jurisdiction. It's important to emphasize that this has been a linear process with steps building on the previous steps. We have to go through individual committees before we can put the TIP together. Each of these subcommittee and committee meetings was open to the public and agendized. The draft TIP is based on project lists approved by respective subcommittees, the Transportation Planning Committee, or fiduciary responsible agencies pursuant to each funding source. As with previous TIPs, the full document is updated and built from the current adopted TIP. All elements such as the Title VI analysis, transportation performance measures assessment, fiscal constraint, and the air quality conformity analysis fulfill federal requirements for TIP development. These are all requirements that we must follow. The draft TIP was posted on March 18th for review, as referenced in the memo from the TPC chair. At the March 31st TPC meeting, comments were discussed and the TPC unanimously approved the draft TIP. In terms of next steps, a 30-day public comment period, including TIP open houses, will commence prior to Regional Council's review of the draft TIP. A public hearing will be held at the May PAG Regional Council meeting, followed by request for Regional Council approval. It's important to review some of the key considerations for this TIP. Per the Notice of Funding Availability memo from August, the TIP is developed in compliance with federal and state regulations. RTA projects comply with the direction of the RTA board to meet the RTA's statutory and financial commitments, and was unanimously endorsed by the Citizens Accountability for Regional Transportation, or CART committee. It's important to emphasize that the RTA plan is a state mandated plan with specific requirements. For example, the RTA has an oversight committee and the RTA must conduct performance audits. We must comply with state law. The RTA financial plan was affirmed by the RTA board chair, the CART chair, the RTA technical management committee chair, and the transportation planning committee chair. Per the RTA board chair, at the RTA board's discretion, cost overruns may be funded by supplemental RTA funding if there is funding capacity in the RTA budget or by other available regionally dedicated dollars. This would be determined on a case-by-case basis and require approval of an amendment to the project's intergovernmental agreement. So, in other words, the TIP process cannot get ahead of the RTA board, and the TIP cannot exceed the RTA ballot amounts without RTA board approval. This is an action item and staff recommend approval of the draft TIP. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm happy to take questions.
I've got a question, Terry, when you're ready.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
That's okay.
I'm telling you to go ahead and you're not talking, so I'm like, I must be muted.
I must have muted. So thanks for the presentation, Jamie. Just a couple things, and I'm not sure if this is to you or to Farhad. We've got a couple of things, and I think the TIP overall is good, and I'm appreciative of all the work that's gone into it. Got a couple of things I want to make sure I bring to the committee's attention. Number one, there are two HAWCs that were not included in the HSIP component. One of them was Speedway Ritchie, then was Grant Arcadia. Those were previously, I believe, approved or included. Just want to make sure the funding for that is allocated somehow, somewhere. How we fund it, not important to me, don't worry about it. But we've got those that have already been promised to our folks. So we just got to make sure that those are included somehow, or at least the funding for it's included. The second part of it, and I'm sorry to be a broken record, I just want to make sure that there's adequate funding for downtown links. I know that the tip includes the ballot amount, but it looks to be about $10 million short. I know Farhad, you and I had conversations around that. I just want to make sure that there is adequate dollars to cover the cost of that contract. As you know, it's already under construction. So with those two thoughts and caveats, if you will, I'd be happy to move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Right.
Mr. Ortega. Mr. Chair, would you like me to respond to those comments, or?
Please do, Mr. Brown. I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ortega, members of the committee. So with regard to the HSIP Highway Safety Improvement Program projects, we appreciate the City of Tucson bringing to our attention the need to include those projects in the draft project list. And actually, we've been working since the TPC meeting to do just that. So we intend to include those projects in the draft project list before it is finalized. So thank you again for bringing that to our attention. And with regard to the downtown links funding issue, thank you again for bringing that to our attention. My understanding is that we really need to wait for the IGA details to be reviewed and then approved by the RTA board before we can add that to the tip via an amendment, if that's to be the desire of the RTA board. But I will also defer to Mr. Mohini if he has any more to add to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Jamie. On the HSIP projects, I just want to add that those are competitive grants awarded by ADOT, and our normal process is any outside funding that's awarded by another agency that comes in, that's an automatic addition to our tip. Typically, we can do a normal amendment anytime. Obviously, in this case, since we're developing the plan, we'll include it in the final document. And again, as a normal practice, and obviously we welcome and we celebrate anytime there's new money coming to the region. So anytime we get that opportunity, we try to do an amendment quickly. So that should not be an issue. As far as downtown links, again, appreciate the comment. And as you know, our goal is to complete all the RTA projects, and we'll work with you and with the board to make sure that we can move forward and amend the IGA when the time comes.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, very much. Just a reminder, we do have, matter of fact, I can see them out my window here, a bunch of cranes out there. So that project's underway. So we got to make sure that those dollars are allocated.
Hey, Mike, real quick, the two hawk signals, the one at Speedway Ritchie, as I recall, is that's like country club area, Alvernon area?
Yeah, it's in that ballpark. It's in that area. It's kind of east of the university. Yep.
And the other one I know, Katie, is over by Swan and Grant. So, okay, good. Any other questions from the board for Mr. Brown, or any other discussion?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? This is Artemio with Vasco Yaqui.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm fine with the tip. Appreciate that we're able to review the full tip, before it's released. But again, I just want to put it on record that it was stated and promised 2 years ago that this whole tip process would be more transparent, more input from the tip subcommittees and the other committees. I believe I don't think that's happened. I don't. Just the graph of the entire process, I don't think is the right way to go. And it appears that once there's public input, it doesn't go back to the committee for review. It looks like it's just going to push forward with, despite whatever the public may say. And I just hope in the future that this whole tip process is more transparent, is approved upon, and not taking another step backwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mohimi, did you want to respond to that at all?
No, Mr. Chair, you have a motion and we don't have a second yet. So if you don't mind,
Okay.
let's
All right.
get a second and then we can have more discussion if you like.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
so we have a motion and I heard a second from Mary. I think that was Mary. Any further discussion?
Terry, Mr. Chairman, I'd
Yes.
suggest that Farhad have an opportunity to respond to Mr. Royo's comments before we vote on this item.
Very good.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I'll be happy to. Again, going back to Jamie's presentation and outline, we've had over 14 public meetings. They were all agendized. Various committees are involved in different portions of the planning process and programming process. And like any other process, typically we want to put it out there to get public comment, and the comments will go to the regional council for regional council's consideration. So it's one of those processes that you want to have a good draft before we put it out for public comment, and that's the phase we're in currently. And obviously, any comments we receive from the public will be discussed and addressed by the regional council.
Thank you, Mr. Mohimi. Any further discussion? Yeah, I have to say, if no one else has anything, I haven't been involved in the process, certainly as long as some of you have been and been on this committee as long. I've actually been pretty impressed with the process and the work that's gone into it. So I do, Mr. Brown, Mr. Mohimi, appreciate, and I know the comments about the tip, you know, are well taken. It's you know, a good document, and appreciate the work that's been done on it. So we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, we'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I move for adjournment.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
A second.
Motion then seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you. I'll give you a call in a minute, Mary.
Okay, thanks, Terry.
See y'all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.